Right, guys, welcome back to Genesis Block, the podcast. Today's episode is going to take a deep dive on how one should approach, or at least how we believe one can approach, analyzing an NFT project. We're well aware that it's early days. Valuation for such projects are in its infancy, to say the least, right? But still, we're going to attempt just to give some sort of structure to anyone who's willing to, or is interested in really taking a deep dive here. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Yash. Yash, over to you.
Right. So NFTs are basically non-fungible tokens, as you all know. So what that means is it's a unique token which has its own unique address, which can be traded on a blockchain, and that data for that unique token will be on the blockchain. So to understand that exactly, we need to just take a small detour into token standards of Ethereum. So the first token standard was ERC20, which allowed people to create tokens on top of the Ethereum blockchain. For example, Uniswap or DAI or Compound. These kinds of tokens were built on top of the Ethereum blockchain, and they usually power some kind of economy, which is like a market maker or a lending and borrowing platform. And these tokens were central to that. And these tokens were fungible, which means that each Compound or each Uniswap token is identical to each other Compound and Uniswap token, similar to how any currency functions. In 2017, there was a new token standard released called ERC721, which essentially allowed people to create unique tokens for unique goods, and that token would be associated with that particular good. So this started first with CryptoPunks, where each punk had unique traits that were generated, and each punk had a unique token address, which is an ERC721 token. And this was huge at the time, because for the first time, goods that were unique could be traded on digital platforms, digital goods. And then the last token standard is ERC1155, which is kind of a mixture of ERC20 and ERC721, in that you can create projects where you have multiple types of different assets with different properties that can be released using this one token standard, right? So that's just a breakdown of the different token standards that Ethereum has, and other blockchains as well have kind of followed along using these similar standards on their respective blockchains, right? So now we can go into the common misconceptions that NFTs today currently have. We see questions like, why can't you just screenshot an NFT? What's stopping me from doing that? And the truth is, nothing's stopping you from screenshotting an NFT. That's not the point of it, right? An NFT is essentially just a random set of numbers and letters, right? It's kind of like a hash, and that hash links to some data, and it's you essentially own that link to the data. You don't own the data itself, right? So for example, if I buy an NFT and it's an NFT of some kind of artwork, I don't own the artwork. I own the link to that artwork, and that artwork can be stored on like either centralized or decentralized storage. But essentially, I just own the metadata to that artwork, right? So that's a big misconception people have. And even though you can screenshot an NFT, your ownership is only proven when it's uploaded to a blockchain that you own the metadata to that specific picture. So that's how that works. And essentially, NFTs are unique in the sense that it's the first time digital goods can have proven ownership, and these digital goods can be completely unique, right? So this gave birth to a number of different NFT projects, and the majority of NFT projects you see out there today are what are known as PFP projects, right? Or profile picture projects, where people, essentially artists, they basically create different traits, right, for for their specific project, their artwork, they'll have, for example, 10,000 different types of, for example, bored apes, right? And each bored ape has its own unique traits that makes it unique. And these traits can, vary, and these traits can have different rarities. And there's lots of different factors that make each NFT unique, right? So how it usually works is artists will create, they'll have a template which has different traits, and then they'll randomly generate different artworks based on those traits, so that each artwork will look similar but will be completely different. And that's how they generate a set of 10,000, for example, 10,000 different art pieces, which then become known as a collection, right? So that is basically how today's NFT projects work. What do you guys think? Do you guys have anything to add to that? Maybe I missed out on something.
Nah, I think you mostly covered everything. I think just an interesting thing to note around, when ERC 721 came into the picture in 2017, it's the entire story of Dapper Labs and CryptoKitties and the Flow blockchain that they created. That's a very interesting one to read if you're interested in the history of the NFT space. So Roham Garigoslu, who's the founder of Dapper Labs, he they essentially came upon the idea of CryptoKitties as a way to get people into NFTs. And you can consider CryptoKitties as the progenitor of the entire NFTs have different traits and they're playful, and it's kind of a part of culture rather than crypto, which is mostly related to the financial world. So over the last year we've seen such a massive explosion in NFTs, and now everyone, including so many high profile people, so many celebrities and stuff, they own NFTs. I mean, it's because it's bringing crypto to life for people through culture, and that's an important part of it. And if you want to read about how Flow and Roham and Dapper Labs, came about, Packing McCormick's got a really good article that came out, I think, last month or a month and a half ago or something like that. So I think that might be a really good place to, read a bit about the history of how all this happened, and also get a bit of insight into Flow and Dapper and, how they're doing their thing, and why they're, one of the more innovative NFT companies out there.
Absolutely. And you made me think of another point, which is that, when there was DeFi summer of, 2020, there was mass usage of, like, let's say, Ethereum blockchains and the Ethereum blockchain and dApps built on that. But the thing is, those dApps are still quite niche, right? Like, even in traditional finance, the general world would not know the intricacies of traditional finance, and only a finance person would. And similar for DeFi, you have to be heavily into the crypto ecosystem, as well as having a strong understanding of traditional finance to understand how these different dApps work. NFTs, on the other hand, it's just like a gateway for anyone to come in, right? The only barrier to entry is understanding how a MetaMask wallet works. Once you have Ethereum in your MetaMask wallet, you can essentially just go and buy any NFT, and it's like just like a one-click type process. And the finality time of that transaction being approved is even faster than with traditional art, right? So it's like a real-time market for art and collectibles, which was never there before, with the most efficient price discovery ever. So, I mean, NFTs have led to, in a way, mass adoption that DeFi never would have been able to do, and has brought way more people into the crypto world. Even though it's, subject to lots of speculation and things like that, it's still one of the best entryways we've ever seen to the crypto world.
And also, like, another thing to keep in mind, right? Every great invention starts as a game. If NFTs seem stupid, like if profile picture projects, they seem like, oh, someone's just owning like this, someone's spunking like $1 billion on this, JPEG of a monkey or like a Japanese character in an anime. I mean, yeah, sure. Like, if you look at it, it's not, it's cool, but it's also not worth the amount of money. But actually, it's playful, and I think that we'll cover this later, Yash. But it's also a bit of a luxury good. But also, it's essentially an onboarding mechanism. You teach people about crypto through NFTs. You teach people how to use wallets. You teach the importance of self custody. You kind of baptism by fire basically, right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
even though NFTs have exploded in prominence, the ecosystem is still not as well developed as we'd like it to be, right? It's still mirroring the rest of the crypto ecosystem in terms of UI, in terms of UX, etc., etc. So it's introducing people and onboarding so many users into crypto that it's just a mechanism for helping people understand why all of this stuff matters, and like at least exposing them to what this world is all about.
Yeah, exactly.
One more thing I'll add to just this introductory part of our conversation. I think we touched upon the importance really that NFTs are playing in terms of the overarching Web3 ecosystem. But one thing that I will touch upon with respect to NFTs is just what Yash you had touched on earlier, which is what exactly they are, right? Because there is a lot of still there is a lot of gray area and a lot of misunderstandings on what they are. And I want to just share one, I mean, insight you could say as to what helped me understand them, and that is essentially digital scarcity. Before NFTs, you didn't really have a true form of digital scarcity, and what that means is you could never create scarcity of any digital file. So
Yeah,
it could be
absolutely.
MP3, it could be a JPEG, it could be literally anything. It could be a Word doc or any file type, right? Um, that was not possible because if you sent me a file, then effectively no one knows who has the original. But with the
Yeah,
introduction of NFTs, now you do. And what that really unlocks is just a game of bragging rights, really. And because now you know who has the original. Um,
yeah,
and that is something that helped me wrap my head around. Okay,
yeah,
why are people spending so much money on it? And so that's one thing. And the second thing I'll touch upon is to emphasize how fundamental NFTs are, right? So NFTs aren't just what I just said they are. They're not just a form of digital scarcity. They are that, but they're also much more, which I'm sure we're going to touch upon. But the point being that at least I believe it's as fundamental to Web3 as the web page was to Web2, right?
right. Yeah,
So of course it's not a
it,
perfect analogy, but how everything now you see, or most of Web 2 is built on a website, or has a web page which has different facilities, like like an Amazon has its e-commerce built on it. YouTube
Mm-hmm.
has video streaming built on its web page. Similarly, I believe NFTs are going to unlock, or going to be like one of the base, the skeleton really of what Web3 is going to become. So yeah, so these are the two things that I want the audience to just keep in mind as we go ahead with this episode.
yeah. I mean, it's proof of digital ownership for the first time ever, right? I mean, before this, there was no kind of security over any kind of digital assets. You have to trust, centralized custodians, digital custodians with, different types of assets like data or, digital money, which is, banks have online or whatever. You're trusting someone with your goods. For the first time with crypto, you can now own those goods, have custody of them, and make sure that they're completely secure and that only you have access to those goods, right? It's a very unique way of interacting in a digital world now.
Exactly.
So now
Yep.
I guess we can kind of transition into the core of what today's episode is about, which is today's NFT landscape essentially, and how we analyze NFT projects in today's landscape. Because currently NFTs, even though they do have a lot of future uses which have not been crystallized yet, currently NFTs are mainly being used to create PFP projects or artwork, right? And PFP projects can be analyzed to a much greater degree than artwork because there are just more goods to look at in a collection, which leads to more transaction volume, which leads to more efficient price discovery. So we're going to look in detail at how to analyze a PFP project today. So the main thing with any crypto project, including NFT, PFP projects, is who are the founders, right? So for any NFT project, the founders in general, it would be better if they had a good track record, if they're doxed, they're not anonymous, because when you expose or you show the world who you really are, it's tougher to rug pull and run away with all the money, because that'll lead to, obviously people will never trust you again or whatever. So a docs team with a good track record is like one of the first things I would look for in an NFT PFP project. The next thing you want to look at is the beginning, when they release the project for the first time, right? So whenever they release a project, people have the opportunity to mint one or many different collectibles from that project, right? So the mint price into the supply is the amount that the NFT team will raise, right? So the initial cost to them is creating the artwork and then releasing it. And then the amount they raise comes from the mint. And then they use this money to further their NFT project in whatever way they see fit, right? So before we get into that, we'll look at some other things that they, are useful to look at. So one other thing that you all obviously need to look at is the roadmap of that they've released, which basically means how they plan on transitioning the project from just a PFP project to something bigger, right? What is their end goal with the project? Is it like punks just to be a PFP collection and it's the first one, which is why it has that value, or they want to add some more utility to the NFT project? And the second thing is obviously the artwork itself, right? Like, to be part of an NFT collection, you need to, in some basic form, resonate with the art they're creating, right? Like, it should strike a chord within you, because artwork is so subjective, right? And there's so many different options. You should, when buying into an NFT project, really, understand where the artists are coming from and get what they're trying to create and really resonate with that, because otherwise you're just kind of, in their words, aping into something instead of actually caring about the project itself. So that's another thing I would look at. Then the fourth thing I look at is the community around the project, which basically means, go on Twitter, go on Discord, look at what the community is talking about. Is the engagement regular? Is the community welcoming? What kind of people essentially are, stimulating community conversation? What kind of people are buying into the project? Are they, very crypto savvy people, or do they just want to enter and then exit and kind of just make a lot of money in a quick amount of time and just flip their NFTs, right? Do people buy into the long-term goal of the project as well, or do they see it as just an opportunity to make some quick cash? Because that is very important, because otherwise it could just be a few large holders kind of pumping up the price and the normal retail buyer entering, and then it just gets dumped really quick on them without them even realizing. So definitely community engagement is a huge thing for an NFT project, even more so than normal crypto projects, just because of how subjective a space it is, right? It's one of the few ways you can gauge how well a project is doing in your eyes. Right. So the next thing is to, after you've seen the roadmap, you have to, if you're kind of late to a collection, you want to see whether the team has stuck to their previous roadmap, right? You want to see whether they execute when they say they're going to execute, and they execute exactly what they say they're going to execute. Because lots of times teams release, plans for games and other ways where you can better that NFT project, but usually the execution is very tough to do, because they're not like a big company funded by lots of money. It's tough to execute things on such a scale which would really live up to expectations. And managing expectations and reality is very important with NFT projects, and making sure that the team does exactly what they say they do, because that'll give you a barometer of how their future roadmap will look like and whether you can trust that they'll execute the way they say they're going to execute. So now I keep talking about this roadmap, right? So what exactly would be part of a normal, NFT PFP project's roadmap? So essentially what the creators of the NFT project want to do usually is create some kind of brand or digital society or something that will endure through time, right? And the way to do that is to scale the NFT ecosystem and monetize the NFT project even further. So to monetize, there are different routes that you can take. But it's usually one of few of the following things I'm going to mention, right? So let's take Bored Ape for example, right? So they had Bored Ape Yacht Club, which was just those 10,000 Bored Apes, right? Then they introduced Mutant Ape Yacht Club, which was essentially mutated apes, right? Which a normal Bored Ape Yacht Club holder could get access to. And then they even had serum, which is like essentially you can give your Bored Ape mutant serum and create a mutated ape, which is just really cool, right? If you think about it, because you're finding further ways to engage with your audience. And because their artwork is so good, all the mutated apes have their own distinct kind of look compared to Bored Apes. And they've created an entire new club out of Bored Apes, right? So the way I've thought about it, I might be wrong, but let's say there's Giorgio Armani, right? It's a huge brand, very, very premium, but they want to kind of diversify out of that brand. So what do? They create Emporio Armani, which is like a slightly lower tier brand, but it's still an Armani, right? So this is the same thing. Even though it's not a Bored Ape, it's a mutant ape, which is still an ape, which gives it that value to people. Then they have things like tokens, right? So projects usually release tokens, which will give them some kind of utility within that specific NFT ecosystem. So for Bored Ape, for example, they've just released ApeCoin, and ApeCoin is essentially firstly a governance token, and then it can be used for transactions within the Bored Ape ecosystem, right? So what is this Bored Ape ecosystem or any NFT project for that matter? They usually scale in this way, right? So they have a token, then they have things like land sales where they'll sell land to you, and you can then use that land in like a virtual world and use your specific NFT in that virtual world on your land. You can rent out that land. So that's one way they monetize land sales. Then they have something like a P2E game where the NFT you bought with its unique characteristics, rarities, etc., can be used within this P2E game, and your NFT will function in its own unique way while playing the game. And then this P2E game will probably use that same in-game currency and reward users, and you can then buy stuff in that game to further your NFT, make it better, or whatever, something like that. Then they have things like merchandise, right? So they're trying to create real world goods as well to further their brand image. Create merchandise, people will buy that merchandise, and it won't be as exclusive and as expensive to buy as a normal NFT. Like, I'm just talking about Bored Ape Yacht Club because that's the best executed project. But even the merchandise, it can be a lot. It can serve a wider variety of users who don't need to be crypto savvy or don't need to be crypto rich to buy this merchandise. Then they use things like staking, where you can stake your NFT and earn more earn more currency, or you can rent out your NFT to other people if if there's a P2E game and you don't really want to use it, you can rent it out and someone else can use it and earn currency from this NFT you've rented out. And then finally, there's things like mating and mutating, which you saw with CryptoKitties and now Bored Apes, where you can combine two different NFTs to create a completely new NFT with new traits, which would be shared from its parents in a way. Or mutant apes, where you mutate your current Bored Ape into something entirely different. So lots and lots of different ways and business models in which NFT projects monetize themselves. And this is not even an exhaustive list. There's so many new models coming out every day with different projects where they essentially try to expand their brand and create something enduring. And the way to do that is, in my opinion, is you create something top tier and then you try and diversify to make it more and more accessible. So you start at the top of a pyramid and then you diversify and make it more and more general and mass, like a mass segment type good.
Yeah.
Similar to just a regular fashion bag.
Yeah.
I think over here now, one thing that's very important to mention is right now the PFP projects, they are inherently exclusive. They drive their value by being, by maintaining that exclusivity. And like you rightfully said, then as they scale, they have to go down to the masses in that pyramid to really keep that growth going. But the trick here is they have to do this without debasing their brand value. Right?
Yeah.
And if you look at it, if you continue this case study of Bored Ape, right? That's exactly where they are. They are at that threshold where they cannot continue scaling their growth by just being exclusive. They have to essentially execute a way to expand their ecosystem without debasing the original value. And that's, I mean, we're literally living right now in the moment to see what their hypothesis is, and which is their release of their metaverse project, right? Their I believe it's called Other Side. Like, it's literally just happening right now. And the way they are thinking about it now, no one really knows if it's going to work or not. But what their plan is to to offer this accessibility to all is essentially part of their metaverse. They're opening it up to all NFT projects. And by of creating an SDK and whatnot for other NFT projects to link up to their massive the MMORPG that they're building. But at the same time, if you look at the stats, I don't have the numbers on hand, but if you look at the stats on how you're eligible for these various land drops and all that are going to be the foundation of this open world, it's still prohibitively expensive. You need to have like X amount of ape coins. I think it was like $6,000-7,000 worth, and a couple other entry barriers. So how they do it is still up for grabs. But this is an interesting concept of how they're allowing other NFT projects, literally any NFT project, to really just to hook up to the Bored Ape ecosystem. So yeah, let's see how that pans out.
But I mean, here's the thing with that, right? Earlier, the barrier to entry to enter the Bored Ape Yacht Club is you need to own a Bored Ape, right? Now, to be part of this Bored Ape ecosystem, you just need to own a certain amount of ApeCoin, right? And ApeCoin can be bought and sold in an exchange. So you can see how the project founders, they want to monetize and make it accessible to a much bigger group of people, essentially, right? It is still a barrier to entry to own, $7,000 of ApeCoin, but even then, $7,000 as compared to $1 million is nothing, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it. So I mean, and this ApeCoin would be like the foundation of the virtual world that they're trying to power, right? And if you look at other virtual worlds, like let's say Decentraland or the Sandbox, they have like multiple billion-dollar valuations already. And ApeCoin would be far bigger than that because of the brand they've already created and their track record of executing, right? So taking into consideration all those factors, this could be potentially, game changing for the virtual world / NFT marketplace.
Yeah. So I think there's like one or two things that I'd also want to add, right? So like, okay, so I think the first thing that I just want to touch upon is the way we're using staking. And it was just a point that I just wanted to bring out because so there was a really good article released, I think like last week by Cobie, He's this. I think a lot of people know who Cobie is, but he's essentially a crypto influencer, I guess. Not really an influencer, writer, thinker. I don't know how to describe what he is. I guess what we are, right? But
He's a crypto bro on Twitter, basically.
he's a crypto bro on Twitter, basically. Yeah. So essentially, I think he brought out an interesting point that the way that staking was first defined was that it essentially was a way to secure a network, right? Like it is a way to lock up your collateral, validate blocks, and contribute to the security of a network, while essentially earning rewards, in order to essentially allow the protocol to continue operating. Now, what is staking? What is staking devolved into? We're calling everything staking, right? Like if you're staking ApeCoin, like you're getting rewards. That's not really what staking is. It's essentially what ApeCoin is doing with the staking is essentially what the V token model is, which is your kind of it's a spin on the V token model. It's not even that in its entirety, right? Like it's essentially saying, oh, we're going to give you more rewards if you if you don't just sell your current coins, and call staking, and you just lock it up. But it's not actually staking because you're not validating any blocks. There's no risk for you to do anything. You're just locking your tokens up and contributing to the health of the ecosystem. So fine, like that's okay. That's completely okay, right? You're incentivizing people not to sell. You're kind of creating, you're contributing to essentially the price of the token going up. Fine, whatever. Like that's not what we're analyzing here. But I don't think it's really staking, and I think that needs to be brought out, because let's try and like avoid these terms from getting mixed up. And like what actual staking is a very important process in maintaining the security for blockchain, and like actually incentivizing validators to validate correctly. And that's a completely different thing from incentivizing people with token inflation to just not sell their tokens, which is again like not debating the merits of that.
Absolutely.
Another thing that I think in terms of the community aspect that you mentioned as well, right? Look at and in terms of the founding team, the community aspect, all of those kinds of things. I think that like what's important to note there is, look at how the founders are conducting themselves on Telegram. Are they trying to, or on Discord, if you question something about the project, how they're responding? Like it's a very easy thing to do. And it may seem like completely, obvious on the face of it, but if they're responding positively to, negative feedback, if they're trying to explain things out completely, if they're taking the time to actually, engage with their community in the way that, and like not try to block people or like, diss them when people are asking, questions or like block and just trying to find out more about the community. It's a very simple thing to do and to keep in mind, but it actually like everyone doesn't do that well. And it's, and if you find founders in an NFT project or in this space to be kind of sus, not very trustworthy, literally run in the opposite direction. There's no, like, the most important thing about NFT projects is founders, as you mentioned, Yash, right? Like it's such an important aspect of this.
Yeah.
And if you find someone who's behaving in like a not less in like a not ideal manner, in a less than ideal manner, in any sort of shifty way, there's so many different projects out there. You don't need to risk your money like that. You don't need to risk anything like that, right? Like you need, if there's really no point of going down that route of going like, oh, they're like this right now, but they'll get better. I believe in the project. The roadmap is very cool. Fine. But in NFT projects, the founding team is so important that it's just critical not to look past this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And one thing to just elucidate the importance of community, right? Is that now there are full-blown job descriptions of community manager. Projects won't be hiring community managers if they didn't see the importance of this, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this just really emphasizes what Sid was saying.
I mean,
Yep,
I think
exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go on.
So I was just going to say that basically it comes down to the fact that when you release a normal crypto protocol, that protocol has some kind of use, right? So even if the founders, are anonymous or they're not doxed, if you see the protocol has utility, you will still want to use it if you can ensure that it's secure, right? NFT project, there's no inherent utility to it, right? Like you're just paying a absurd amount of money for certain NFTs to be part of a community.
Yeah.
So that community is what is valuable to you, right? So that community is started by the founders, and they are the ones who direct the way the community grows. So you need to have complete faith in the founders of an NFT project, way more so than a traditional crypto protocol.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think that's brought about the point really well. But yeah, I think the community is just the number one thing to look for in an NFT project.
Yeah.
Just that it's so critical.
Yeah.
I think
So
one
now,
way to just for some actionable advice really, to how to judge a community. There's no way around just going into the Discord channels and participating and observing. There's
yeah.
there's really no way to learn it from a book or by reading. In terms of how do you judge a community, right? Because these are pretty ambiguous concepts to someone who is new to this ecosystem, right? So just that's the only way, at least I've
Yeah.
concluded upon.
Yep.
Pretty much. Discord and Twitter is like the lifeblood of any NFT project.
Exactly. Exactly. I think yeah, exactly.
So now we can move on to some technical stuff that you should look at with any NFT project. So most NFT projects today would be listed on OpenSea, for example, or any other NFT aggregator, but OpenSea is the biggest. So I'm just going to talk about OpenSea, but this would apply to any NFT aggregator. So on OpenSea, because NFT markets are real time and they're 24/7, there is a very efficient, lots of stats out there for you to see, unlike any other luxury good you would have bought, right? You can see daily price history, price volume, the price traded for each NFT. You can literally track each NFT sale, right? So you want to get, when you buy into a project, you want to know that project inside out, right? So what do you need to know exactly? So first thing you need to do is see all the different traits that the creators have created, then understand the rarity of each trait, right? And then you need to go and look at the transaction history and see what different traits are trading at. Essentially, you need to see what everyone else is valuing these traits at, and whether over time that price is efficient, right? You need to make sure that people are paying the right amount for the right trait based on just how rare that trait is, because the more rare something is, the more you'd want to pay for it if it's a luxury good. So you want to make sure that a project has where the pricing of different NFTs that are sold, they make sense. So the ultimate end goal for you should be, when you look at one specific NFT and you look at all its traits, you should know personally how much that should be worth. And then you can take a call as to whether you want to buy into that project, because, firstly, you think that there is something out there that is undervalued in terms of what it actually is in terms of rarity. So you can then snipe that and realize that long term the market will be efficient and you will get the price you deserve to be paid for it. Um, so really, making sure that you know exactly how much each NFT piece in the collection should be worth is like the most important thing to then go and make a buying decision. Because unless you can actively yourself price each NFT, you won't really know how much or you should be paying for something, which I think is very different compared to normal luxury goods, right? Because normal luxury goods are created by companies and they kind of set the price and you just have to pay that much for it. With NFTs, because it's a real-time market which is on all the time, and because there's way more volume happening and there's all this data which you can see, it leads to the most efficient price discovery of, which we've never seen really before in history. And you should take advantage of that and ensure that you are paying exactly what you should be paying or less for a specific NFT instead of overpaying and just, kind of going with the hype and buying, like let's say buying something for the floor price just because you want to be part of it. Maybe you can find something that's more expensive, but in relative terms is way cheaper than it should be.
Yep.
So all of this can be found on OpenSea, right? You just go to the specific NFT project and you can see all the transaction history, the volumes, and just analyze all of that. Take a couple of days just to completely know your shit, basically.
Yep. I
So
think
yeah,
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think in general, right, the blockchain allows for each. There's so much analysis that can be done in public. I mean, look at Dune Analytics.
yeah,
Look at there's so many different, like we spoke about also in the investment template, the investment template memo. Sorry, in the investment template podcast, etc. There's so many different ways in which and resources that you can use to analyze blockchains, analyze what's going on in terms of specific tokens, smart contracts, etc. The information's all out there. There's Dune Analytics for like different tokens. There's like token terminal. There's so much that you can use to assess, how a project is doing, what the revenues are, what essentially the activity is, the number of wallets that are using it, what the whether how much whales are holding, etc., etc. So it's just there's a wealth of information out there. It's trying to filter out the noise from the it's trying to filter out essentially all the noise that's out there. But there are ways to do that. It's just about equipping yourself with the right toolkit to do that.
absolutely.
Cool.
So now I guess we can go to the final part of this podcast, which essentially is trying to.
I think Yash, sorry, before that, right? Like just
Yeah.
in terms of analyzing NFTs as well, and analyzing NFT projects. I think one area that we've not spoken about much that's really important is copyright, right?
Right.
And yeah, and copyright is at the heart of these NFT projects because there's quite a lot of there are different ways to do this, right? So for example, CryptoPunks, you don't have a copyright access to each different CryptoPunk, or you didn't before Yuga Labs bought Larva Labs, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, like before the Bored Ape Yacht Club bought CryptoPunks and Meebits. You couldn't essentially do that. So CryptoPunks, so Larva Labs restricted their holders from creating derivative products or using its branding because it wanted to preserve its own branding for probably get like a corporate deal or whatever like that, right? So this, that's kind of antithetical to the way Web3 operates. It's about giving, individuals as much freedom to do whatever they want with their objects. And that's why I think that one of the benefits of CryptoPunks being bought over by by Yuga Labs was that now holders would gain greater commercial rights to create derivative products as they please. So for example, but there's again another element to even the Bored Ape Yacht Club copyrights, right? So each Bored Ape Yacht Club holder has the ability to create whatever derivatives they can, for example, there's the trilogy that's been created by Coinbase where Bored Ape Yacht Club owners can, submit their Bored Apes for, inclusion in that trilogy and, get $10,000 or something if they are selected, which is, by the way, money flowing from the rich to the rich, but that's that's another thing too. That's a topic for another time. But essentially, you still can't use Bored Ape Yacht Club's brand name and logos. So there was an article in Bankless, I think it was last week, which is around which mentioned how Arizona iced tea didn't use the board they essentially used the Bored Ape Yacht Club branding, and the essentially the owners of Yuga Labs were like, oh, they haven't used the branding correctly, this is not strictly in terms, they kind of let it go, but essentially that's also kind of, and I agree with this, it's kind of in conflict with the ethos of how Web3 should be, right? So there are different types of copyrights. There are different types of ways in which copyrights can be issued. There's that, and one that I want to talk about is the Creative Commons license. So it's CC zeros, right? So essentially, right, in 2009, Creative Commons, which is an American nonprofit, they issued a CC0 licensing standard in 2009. So creators essentially can say that, oh, this is my work, but it belongs in the public domain and anyone can do whatever they want with it, right? They essentially, the creators give up ownership in like a legal sense. So it's essentially that there's no rights reserved, and whoever essentially owns an NFT that's issued under a CC0 license, they can do whatever they want with that NFT project, the branding, blah blah blah. So ownership is essentially intact wherever. It's not you can create hoodies, you can create, I don't know, like whatever crazy real world merchandise you want to create with that NFT project. It's essentially like it's essentially a way of granting NFT holders and just people in general the ability to do whatever they want with that project. And you can kind of see that in the way that for example, there are NFT projects like MFers, or there are NFT projects like Nouns, which are under the Creative Commons license under CC0, and they've inspired so many derivatives, and that kind of is in my mind a soft power as well, because that extends your community so much more. And obviously, like doing it like Bored Ape did in an exclusive club is a very successful way of doing it. I'm not criticizing the business model that they've employed here, but I'm just saying that there are that the way that the NFT ecosystem should grow going forward in line with the ethos of Web3 is through Creative Commons, through enabling community for everyone, rather than just an exclusive set of people who can afford to pay high gas costs, mint all of these things, stay on top of everything. People can should be able to participate in the project in a multitude of different ways, and Creative Commons licenses enable that. It's a very interesting spin on copyright and how NFTs should interact with copyrights. But yeah, that's like one thing that really should be looked at when you're analyzing an NFT project as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's still an evolving ecosystem, right? And all these, I think these kinds of kinks will get ironed out in the future. Once, regulation is a little bit more certain from just governments in general, then people will know exactly what they can do with the NFTs and what they can't.
Exactly.
You just need a standard now, which is like kind of the minimum you need to do for an NFT project, and just the minimum you need to do to be able to commercialize your NFT or the project.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now since you brought up how Bored Ape is, it's very exclusive and things like that, we can kind of frame what NFTs today essentially are, right? And Messari wrote a really good article on this, which essentially they frame NFTs as luxury goods, which I think, I was always looking to give a perfect analogy for what NFTs are, and I think they said it perfectly. NFTs are luxury goods, and they're basically so because, for example, a Bored Ape or a CryptoPunk, they are the pinnacle, the highest, the blue chip NFT, PFP NFT projects today. And they are the blue chips because CryptoPunks are the first ones and Bored Apes just executed really, really well, right? And because of that, the price skyrocketed. But for a normal good, the price is set because of its utility and what it costs to make that good, right? So if it's priced less, the demand should be higher. And if it's priced higher, the demand should be lower. And that's a normal good. But a luxury good works completely the opposite, right? Its value to you in a way comes from its price, and the price is set by social sentiment. And people value something really highly if they think that it's in some way a flex or a way to essentially prove to everyone else in the world that you are of a certain, social or monetary standing, and it gives you credibility in a way. So, for example, why do you buy iPhones instead of like a cheaper, $500 phone? It's because iPhones are just like considered the pinnacle of mobiles, right? They are the best mobile in a way you can buy. And similar, Bored Ape Yacht Clubs and Punks, they are the best NFTs you can buy, which is why they command such a high price. And the value to the person who owns a Bored Ape doesn't come from the fact that it gives them any utility. It comes from the fact that you get psychological satisfaction of owning that Bored Ape Yacht Club. And because it's an NFT, it's a digital good, you can showcase that way more easily to a much wider variety of people as compared to a normal luxury good, right? Like, let's say I'm wearing Yeezys. The only people who are going to see my Yeezys are the people I meet in person, right? And that's a very limited number of people. You can meet me, 50 people maximum on any given night, and they'll know you have Yeezys. But a Bored Ape, I can buy a Bored Ape and go on Twitter and get it verified. And then, automatically it gives me credibility on Twitter because people will be like, okay, he's a Bored Ape holder. So he's either really rich or he's crypto rich, which is why he should get that credibility. And it automatically, in a way, leads to more followers. And, it gives you an identity on digital platforms, which you would not normally be able to get with just normal luxury goods. So it's changing, it's just changing what goods are looked at as, right? Like normally goods are only things that you feel like you actually own, right? And you can feel in person or whatever. But now Bored Apes are giving you credibility and, verification and whatever from a much wider group of people, and you can engage with them a lot more on digital platforms, which is why it's, in a way, lots of people would consider digital luxury goods way more useful to them than physical luxury goods, just because of the amount of people you can show off to, right?
Yeah.
So Bored Apes, they are the pinnacle, right? So Bored Apes are the most expensive NFT projects. And because of that, Bored Apes has set the ceiling for how much, a digital luxury good should be worth. And this ceiling then gives price discovery to other projects which are, striving to be there or maybe not, but it still gives price discovery to intermediate projects and then even to lower tier projects. And so you have an entire spectrum of prices of luxury goods, with Bored Ape being at the top and, entry level projects being at the bottom. But essentially, these are all luxury goods which give you access to digital societies and help you become part of this society, and also give you that credibility online, which you would not normally be able to get through other ways, right? I mean, when you buy a luxury digital good like a Bored Ape, you automatically get that credibility, which you would normally have to build over a long period of time digitally by, whatever content you put out there. So that is why I think these Bored Apes are valued so highly, especially now that Twitter has allowed you to verify your NFTs. You can really prove to the entire world that, you're either rich or you love crypto, or you're crypto rich, or, a combination of all these different things.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I think there's like a really good article that the unlock about NFTs for me was reading this article by this extremely long blog post by this person called Eugene Wei. He released
oh,
it in
yeah, I've read this
2019,
too.
but yep, status as a service, right? So
Yeah.
essentially, and I'm going to copy paste this, but this is essentially what status as a service is. Right, and what it means is that you essentially look at these luxury goods in context of how humans have treated is how humans have interacted with themselves over years, between themselves over years, but also, what luxury goods exactly are. Like, people buy Rolexes and luxury goods because they want to signal something. They want to signal their status, right? They want to have high entertainment, high social capital, and high utility. NFTs can actually bring you all three, and that is what unlocked NFTs for me. Because you get high social capital because you can, for example, if you're a Bored Ape holder, you everyone knows that you own a Bored Ape, so that means you're crypto rich, or you're actually rich, or you have, I don't know, you have the ability to find one of the best investments of all time at minting price. I don't know, right? Like that's what the social capital you get from Bored Ape is. It's quite a lot. It's why everyone from Jimmy Fallon to Justin Bieber owns a Bored Ape, because they want to be part of this cool exclusive club that gives you social capital. What's the entertainment value? Now, the entertainment value is all the things that Yash, you spoke about earlier on, about their roadmap, about play to earn games or this and that, and being part of an exclusive community, an exclusive club, which kind of gives you a lot of entertainment. And there are different things that you can do with your Bored Ape. What is the utility? Now, that is to be defined, and that will come about. But NFTs do have the ability to give you a lot of utility, and I think that we're probably going to discuss this later. But that's where I see the space going as well, and they can occupy all three areas of this graph. And they are, and in comparison to, like, social networks like Facebook, or other types of networks, you can essentially dissect networks and network effects using this model. So it's Eugene Way's Status as a Service must read to understand why NFTs are actually taking so much mind space of people, and why they've become so big. It's because they occupy a very important space on the top right of this axis.
Yeah, absolutely. They just executed perfectly. I don't think any project has come even close to executing the way Bored Ape did. It's just brilliant and completely on point, always sticking to their roadmap, their timelines, and they haven't disappointed up till now, which is why there's so much hype and so much faith in the team to deliver even in the future, and which is why Bored Apes become even more valuable, because you've seen so many other projects where there's rug pulls, or there's something wrong with the roadmap, or they try to release a P2E game and it just looks nothing like the trailer said they would. All these different things, but Bored Ape has always delivered on exactly what they promised.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, so I think like framing the NFTs as luxury goods, especially Bored Apes, I think that's an important way to contextualize why people pay so much money for JPEGs of monkeys,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And
I
also,
mean, yeah, go for it.
also just one more thing that is important on NFTs particularly, right? And how they are framed as these luxury goods is is not just signaling, but the degree to which you can signal. Not degree, maybe nuance is a better word. How nuancedly you can signal, and what I mean by that is, in regular luxury Veblen goods, right? Most of the signaling is to show your either your you're trying to create a perception of your identity by either showing what you love, right? By supporting something that you really believe in, or second is your financial background, right? How rich are you? But the thing with NFTs are that because it's on the blockchain, the same item can do both. What that means is,
Right.
if I own a Bored Ape, someone can know when I bought it. So
Yeah.
someone like a Jimmy Fallon, it shows that he's bought it for the financial signaling, and showing that he's part of this cool club. Whereas someone who bought it at mint, his signal is different even though he owns a Bored Ape as well,
Yeah.
right? So that
Absolutely.
signaling, like basically signaling on steroids, is what NFTs also unlock, which is very,
Yeah.
very unique, and what also has led to this hype of this tool essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yep. Exactly. Cool.
So now I guess we're coming to the close. So we've discussed how to analyze today's NFT projects, but that's obviously not going to be, the status quo in a few years of what NFTs are going to look like, right? In most, people's opinions, NFTs will become way more ubiquitous and will be used in a way wider variety of sectors and, fields in general. So a few of those would be, gaming is a very obvious one, and we're already seeing that to a certain extent. But I think once, big game developers start incorporating NFTs into their games, you will see a lot more open marketplaces and interoperability of NFTs within different games. And we're moving from a closed, siloed gaming ecosystem to something that's way more open and interoperable, with different assets, which would be NFTs essentially being able to be used across all these different games and environments. Games could be made within virtual worlds. Games could be connected to virtual worlds, and NFTs would be at the core of that, because it's the only way we've known of, proving ownership of digital assets. And once you can make these interoperable, these NFTs will have way more value to people, and it'll actually lead to new kinds of economies which we haven't seen up till now. Because
Yeah.
traditionally, gamers and gaming is a very very traditional way of making money. You can, as a streamer, you can make money on Twitch or YouTube, and as a game developer, you can make money through selling the game, or then like something like Fortnite where they have a in-game app store. But once you integrate NFTs and all these things together, you can create entire worlds which operate on NFTs, and you can have different games using different assets, and these can accrue value depending on what the game is designed like. And you can actually make real world money from gaming, which would not be possible traditionally unless you're a very good gamer and you have like a Twitch or YouTube following to monetize. Basically, the point is you won't be reliant on centralized parties to monetize your gaming skills. You can do it however you please, and you don't need to be amazing at it to do it. I mean, like Axie Infinity is like a prime example of this, right? You don't need to be amazing at the game to make money. You just need to have the dedication. And I'm not saying that's the perfect, P2E model. We'll obviously see better ones in the future. But no matter what the model will be in the future, NFTs will be at the core of it.
I think
Then
I think like before we move away from gaming, right, I have a few things I want to say on this topic. So I agree with you in general, but there are a few points on which I differ in with regards to gaming, right? So firstly, it's the interoperability of assets across games. So I think that when we talk about the interoperability of assets, right, I think that it will be interoperable, but only to an extent. And maybe I'll be proved wrong with this, but the thing is that firstly, it's a little difficult for game developers to actually create assets that can move seamlessly across games because of the difficulty of the standards, and like the rendering of different games, right? So for example,
yeah,
if you like try to contextualize this, right, think about a sword in World of Warcraft and like a sword in I don't know, like in like I don't know, Clash of Clans or something, another game, right? Those swords look different. They have different attributes. They are earned differently. Like even though the player might be the same, right? The context in which the sword has been earned in one game is different to the way it can be used in another game. So I think that it might be not it might not be as easy to transfer across these assets natively and easily from one game to another. Maybe you can use it in certain situations. So for example, if you go in like I don't know, World of Warcraft, and you have your den or whatever, I'm just making stuff up, but and within your den you have like a all your assets from like other games in like some sort of gallery or something like that. And maybe I'm also kind of thinking about this in a kind of skeuomorphic replicating the current world, like we have manner, which is creating a museum to display assets. Like that might not be the way that things get done going forwards, but just bear with this example. You can just display your assets in that manner, right? So but you can't actually use it actively within the game, so that might be, one blocker. And another thing is that like game developers actually want to create contained games in many manners, just because they want the experience to be completely they want the experience to flow. They want it to be contained because they want it to be they want to they essentially want to transport you into this world where they've taken so much time to create this, and it's a lot of effort to create essentially NFTs that can just be transmuted from one game to another. Now, there might be standards that come up that people come up with, that allows NFTs to be transported from one game to another. And there might be like an ecosystem of games. So let's say like Epic Games releases like 8 different NFT games, and all your assets are like, it's like a shared universe kind of thing, like how Marvel has done the MCU, right? Like it's a shared universe, and you can move your characters and everything across the game, and that can be very cool. And you can do it within like these kinds of contained ecosystems that are created by the same types of developers. But all assets across all games might be a little difficult. Another thing with gaming is there's actually been quite a lot of resistance from the gaming community in general, to NFTs and the incorporation of NFTs within games. Now, I think this might be because of 2 or 3 different reasons. Firstly, a lot of gamers might be under the conception that NFTs are bad for the environment, because a lot of NFTs are right now minted on Ethereum, and Ethereum still using proof of work. NFTs they do have arguably a net negative impact on the environment. Now, obviously, this is going to change with the merge. I mean, although we're waiting for Godot with that, you're just kind of waiting for the merge to happen. But once the merge does happen, the environmental impact of that might be significantly lowered. But another reason is also because people use games as a way to escape the real world, and and essentially like they don't want to transact in real money within games a lot. Now, I think that's I don't fully agree with that argument, but because essentially what NFTs allow you to do within games is offer you a way of monetizing assets. You don't have to, essentially just, just like grind and like farm out something and like just use a game to earn as much money as you can. There are some games like Axie Infinity in which that is the express, objective. And this is like the first iteration of NFTs in gaming, right? So the play to earn model, all of those kinds of things, they haven't been refined yet at all. You're still in like the very early stages of this thing. Like, forget it's like forget the internet. We're like basically at the caveman level of NFTs in gaming. It's going to get a lot better, but you kind of have to design games that have the correct balance of fun and tokens, rather than if you're thinking of play to earn as a scale in which play is just like, oh, you play for complete fun, and earn is like, oh shit, I want to make a lot of money out of this. You have to kind of balance that scale very finely. And games that are designed with like incorrect tokenomics, which incentivize you just to like earn a ton of money, rather than actually enjoy the game itself, they're not going to succeed. So you have to like cleverly integrate these things. So and this will, I'm positive that this will come in the future, and this is going to be like one of the biggest unlocks of that Web3 will have. But currently it's not there yet, and that's fine because we're still in like the very early stages of this. But yeah, that's my 2 cents with NFTs in games. So like it's essentially we're very early on. You're not gonna whatever the holy grail is of complete interoperability, complete use of assets across games and everything, that might not happen because of technical constraints. But you are going to get in my opinion, a better gaming experience out of this in the future. But you're definitely not there yet.
Yeah, I think developers need to, at least for blockchain games, they need to focus more on the play part than the own part, because
Exactly.
usually a game gets traction if the game is actually fun to play. If you're just playing the game to earn money, then you might as well just do a job and earn money, right? Because it's not going to be fun for you unless you actually enjoy playing the game. So yeah, tokenomics and all of that is very important for the game, but the primary thing, which I think most blockchain games today aren't doing, is focusing on making the gameplay as good as possible right in the beginning.
Exactly.
So once that happens, once more AAA developers also start, thinking of how to create a game which also, has like a token and proper tokenomics and, can be traded on an exchange and, NFTs and everything, then we'll start seeing some progression. And then I guess eventually you want to see some kind of standards which would help with interoperability, or, like at least have a virtual world, for example, on which you can create games within the virtual world, and then have those, because you have a standard for the virtual world, you can have different assets within those games be interoperable with other games within the virtual world, or something like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I'm
Agreed.
just thinking out loud. But yeah, I
Yep.
agree with you in the fact that it's looking very unlikely, at least in the near future, that all assets will be interoperable across all games, right? That's obviously unrealistic, because games inherently are so different. Like there's like shooter games, there's like sports games, there's
Mm-hmm.
no overlap between those two. So what will you even transfer, right? There should be
Yeah.
some kind of standards for different types of games, and all developers need to be on board with those standards and develop games in that certain way for this to be a possibility.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think the main vector through which interoperability is going to, completely revolutionize games, right, is via liquidity. Just, unlocking liquidity for in-game assets. And that's how one game such as a sports game will be interoperable with a shooter game. And what I mean by that is, say, like something like an ultimate team on FIFA, when you really, work your way and buy a really, rare card, you can sell that card for real money, use that money to buy like a really cool gun skin on a Call of Duty, and
Yeah.
therefore transfer value from a FIFA to a Call of Duty,
Yeah.
right? I think that is the main, at least in the near term, that's how interoperability will be achieved. But yeah, completely concur with you guys in the sense of direct, transfer of assets is going to be very difficult. And yeah, I've also experienced the backlash from the traditional gamers when it comes to NFTs. So in terms of just adoption, really community adoption, I feel we're quite some time away.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's, one aspect of NFTs. Then there's obviously, going to be NFTs across different sectors for any kind of good that's not fungible. So the main examples, I don't think we need to go into detail with all of them, but there's real estate, because, every house is unique. So it can have an NFT attached to it, and that, that can be traded, and you now have proof of ownership on a blockchain instead of having to be stored by the government, for example. There's medical records, there's identity verification, there's IP and rights and patents and things like that. There's academic credentials, like your mark sheet can be an NFT, and which can be linked to the mark sheet itself or whatever. And then there's music rights, which, artists can create NFTs, etc., to monetize themselves instead of having to rely on a record label. There's ticketing, instead of using something like Ticketmaster, which takes a exorbitant cut of, all ticket sales, you can just issue NFTs which people display at the venue, and you can just enter, and it's like a one-time use NFT. Or things like voting, like if you want to, as a citizen, vote for something, you'll have your own individual NFT which can be used to vote for different things, right? So it's essentially a way to, have any unique good be free from centralized control, right? It's a way to trade and exchange unique goods without having a centralized intermediary take a big cut of it and having to rely on them for the security over that ownership. So it's a completely, revolutionary business model in a way, revolutionary technology. Um, and I think we should only scratch the surface when it comes to NFTs, right? Like there's so much potential because there's so many different types of goods, which, once we figure out a way to safely link NFTs to the real world, that is when we will see, a mass consumerization of NFTs in a way, and it won't be a niche thing anymore. It's just
Yeah.
that 0 to 1 kind of innovation needs to happen with certain things in the industry for it to become a possibility.
I think that like just a couple of things, I'm not going to dive too deep into these, But I think that just to peek under the hood, right? Just to look under the surface a little bit about what Yash was mentioning. There's so much we haven't covered. For example, for some of these things, when you say identity verification, when you say, academic credentials, patents, voting, ticketing, all of those kinds of things, if you actually zoom out a little bit and look at it in terms of a decentralized identity and
Yeah.
DIDs, like decentralized identifiers, these NFTs and the way that they earned as badges, or like, for example, you've done this, you've gone to this event, you can build a social graph of a person using their NFTs. Like, your data is owned by yourself. But like, you can essentially aggregate you can essentially build a social graph of a person based on the things that they have done via their NFTs. So for example, you can use these things in credit scores. You can use these things, as your identity across a multitude of different platforms. And as you collect these different pieces of your identity, you can choose which parts of this identity you want to show to different platforms, to different experiences. You have complete control over your identity and your data, and NFTs go a long way in enabling this. So I think that this is the one of the biggest things that NFTs will do in the future, and this should be where the future of NFTs takes us. What we've mostly touched upon today is PFP projects and how NFT projects are constructed today. But actually, in like a future looking perspective, what really truly excites me is the utility that NFTs would bring in allowing people to actually control their data, control their identity, and use it across a variety of platforms. And that's where NFTs are going to be truly revolutionary. So that's one thing. Another thing that I just want to slightly touch upon is music NFTs, and what these and this is not only music NFTs, but this can be done for so many different types of NFTs. But essentially, using music NFTs as an example, these are ways of actually giving creators power and fixing the wrongs that the gig economy has brought upon the world. Right? Like, there are so many ways in which the gig economy has obviously benefited us. It allows people to definitely not saying that the gig economy is something that's been a net negative. I don't know, right? I don't think it has. But there are so many things that could be done better. And NFTs offer a way for creators, essentially to and creators, influencers, anyone essentially on the internet, to have a voice and to build a community and to earn a sustainable living through that. And for example, I think it was RAC, who's a Grammy Award winning musician who's released music NFTs, and he said that he earned as much money from selling music NFTs that he's created than he would have in a million streams of Spotify, right? And that just shows you how NFTs are a way for creators to actually wrest back control from centralized platforms that just take their earnings, take a majority of their earnings away from them. And while they give them a bigger audience, and like, while things like Spotify are great, they aren't great for creators. They're great for consumers. That's fine. But this is an additional revenue stream for creators, and allows them to actually create a very strong community with their 1,000 true fans, right? And
Yeah.
that's what NFTs really unlock.
Yeah, I mean, 1,000 true fans is probably the best way to explain it, right? Like, you can make a lot more money with 1,000 true fans in NFTs compared to millions of listeners on Spotify.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's a different way of, completely different way of monetizing yourself.
Yep. Cool. But yeah, that's basically it from me. I think there's obviously, we've scratched the
Yeah.
surface of NFTs and these projects and everything
Yeah.
today on Genesis Block.
I mean, we could talk for like 2 more hours if we wanted to.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
think I think this is a good place to stop and take stock, and
Yeah.
return to this topic maybe at some point in the future. But
Yeah.
I think that we've covered quite a lot of good material today. And hopefully, this has opened up the world of NFTs a little bit more and contextualized them for the listeners.
Absolutely.
All right.
Cool.
Let's wrap things up now. We'll, as usual, put all these collaterals that we've created, the PowerPoint, and any additional notes if we have in the show notes below. And yeah, until next time, I guess.
Yep, we'll also link
See you
some of
guys.
the good articles that we've spoken about, by the way, just some
Yeah.
by Cobie, Statuses Service, etc. In the show notes as well. But yeah, thanks everyone. This was a good chat.
Thank you for
Alright.
listening, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.